Hello and good evening. Welcome to the online MBA info session. My name is Anna Patterson and I'm very happy to be walking you through this informational session tonight. Your expert this evening is Professor Barbara Sturtinger.
Good evening, everyone.
And together we're here to welcome you to ask questions that you might have about this MBA. And on the other hand, we're going to provide some tips about doing an MBA with a busy schedule, because we know that in the past this has been also a critical topic for a lot of managers looking into different MBA programs. And we've collected some tips and tricks over the years, and we wanted to share these with you. So we're going to be starting it off.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. Very warm welcome from my side once again. I'm happy to talk to you this evening about our MBA programs. And the way how we have structured this evening is basically along the questions that we usually get when people come to us and say, I would like to do an MBA, and this is my key question. So the key question, or one of the key questions, is how does an MBA fit into a busy professional environment? So first of all our MBA programs are part-time programs. So by default, we think that you should be working and that you are working full-time. And not only that, but you have to balance a private life, a business life, and an MBA life. So what can we do to make things work out for you? There are several things that I would like to highlight at this point in time. The first one is looking at the schedule and how the schedule is set up to give you an idea of what it would be like to manage your career and your MBA. The way our MBAs are set up is basically in a 3-tier structure, and we call this block of 3 tiers a module, so to speak. So modules are typically 4 days, sometimes 6 days, depending on the program and the specific module we're looking at. But basically what it is, at the core module is when you come to campus and you work with the professors and your colleagues in the classroom on the topic of the module. Before the module, you have the so-called pre-module assignment. And the pre-module assignment, you can think of it as something like homework, basically preparing you for what's going to happen in the classroom when you're here on site. The pre-module assignment is there to bring everybody to a similar level in terms of knowledge on a certain topic. You might be working in marketing and finance might not be your first priority. So for the finance module, you get a lot of material as everybody else in the class to bring you up to speed. And the same would be true for people who work in finance for the marketing module. So the pre-module assignment consisting of cases, readings, book chapters is here to bring everybody to the same level to make sure that you get a fruitful discussion in the classroom where you can contribute, but you can also take out a lot from this conversation. The third module, or the third part of the module, is the post-module assignment. In the post-module assignment, basically you transfer everything that you know by now on the topic of the module into your professional environment. So very often you find challenges that you can relate to in terms of your business environment, and you transfer the knowledge, the know-how that you've generated, your insights on a specific topic into your professional environment. So this is a typical setup of an MBA module. This also means that most likely you will not have a lot of exams. There are a few on certain topics where we think it's needed, but basically your evaluation is ongoing. So you complete your requirements as you go along in your MBA journey. A very important part, and this is something which you should not, as we mentioned, underestimate, is getting things organized. But don't worry, we will get you up to speed very quickly, so you will get into the habit of pre-module assignments, core modules, and post-modules pretty quickly once you start your MBA journey. A second thing that makes doing an MBA next to a professional life easier is the schedule overall. So what I've described in a nutshell on a module, you find outlined in the schedule. And the schedule is predefined, is kind of carved in stone. So you can plan your work, your professional life, your private life around the modules. And that makes it much easier to balance the different requirements. So what you find here is a schedule of the Global Executive MBA, for example. And if we go into more detail here, you already see parts of the features of the program, starting off in Vienna with different modules, and then interlinked to that are the international residencies, which I'm talking about in a minute. So when you plan your schedule, think of the modules in Vienna, of course, but also make sure that you fit the international residencies and the travel to those residencies into your schedule. Yeah, I talked about the residencies very briefly, and this is something apart from the fact that we make it really easy for you to integrate the MBA into your professional life. I also want to focus on key aspects that make our program different from many other programs. Yeah, and I think regardless of which program, MBA program you look at, out of the VIEW Executive Academy, one thing is an underlying thread, so if you speak, yeah, and this is the issue of diversity and internationality. Yeah. This is something that we are very proud of. This is what we strongly believe in, because we think diversity in terms of internationality is a core component and benefit of our programs. So where do we find this international in our DNA? International can be found in the program itself. When you look at the different schedules, you find international residencies. The most global program in that respect is, of course, the Global Executive MBA. And you have different residencies incorporated into the program at different points in time to 3 continents and 6 countries. What is the purpose of those residencies? You are all experienced executives in your part of the world. You know how to deal with your customers, with your competition, and your specific ecosystem where you are doing business. So for a global perspective, for a global view on the world, it's important to not only know your ecosystem, but also experience ecosystems that companies in different parts of the world face. So this is why we take you to the international residencies. Residency typically is composed of an academic part where you learn in the classroom about this environment that you find yourself in, but it also is complemented with company visits, getting engaged with managers in the different parts of the world, and seeing and experiencing how they manage the challenge they find in their part of the world. An outlook on where the Global Executive MBA is taking you. We start with the first residency to Latin America. In the past, it has been Argentina and Brazil. We continue, and the current class is getting ready for that journey right now to China and India. This year, it's Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and Hyderabad. And we rounded out in the US, in Minneapolis, with the Carlson School of Management, which is also our partner in this Global Executive MBA for the double degree program. And this is another aspect where you find the global in the Global Executive MBA program. It is a double degree program. That means we're collaborating with one of the leading business schools in the US, preparing you for a global career, be it in North America, in the European context. You get 2 really strong university partners delivering your degree. Yeah. Talking about international, global, another aspect next to the residencies in the Global Executive MBA is the Global Team Project. The Global Team Project is a collaborative venture between Executive MBA students from the Vienna program and from 2 other programs of the Carlson School of Management, one in the US and one in China. So we will build international teams, usually of 2 students from each of the cohorts, and you will be working on a so-called team project. And it actually is virtual in a sense that you will not be able to meet in person, but you're working through modern communication technology on a business challenge that you as a group take up for yourself. So you can think of it as an international market entry project, either related to the company of one of the participants in the group, or you come up with a completely new venture. We had everything happen, and we even had successful startups out of this global team project. Yeah. One important question that we get always is, how about the return on investment? And of course, that's a very valid question as you're successful and experienced business people. That's definitely on your mind. So whatever I put in terms of effort, in terms of money, how will that pay off in the end? There are a couple of things that I would like to mention along the way. First of all, we have some facts and figures talking about the return on investment, and I will touch upon that later on in my presentation. But when we talk about return on investment, you don't have to wait until you graduate from the program, you get a better job that you aspire, you look for new responsibilities that you've been always keen on getting yourself into. But the return on investment already starts on your first day of the program. It happens along three ways, three different dimensions. The first one is the people sitting next to you. I would guess you've done your homework, you've checked out the program online, so you know that, again, another aspect of international diversity is in the classroom, people sitting next to you. Currently, we have a group of around 45 students, and you have 26 different nationalities in that cohort. So people from different countries, different industries, different companies, and different functional areas. This is true diversity that you are going to encounter in the classroom. And everybody brings in their unique perspectives and experiences. And that is what makes learning at that level so valuable. So the faculty in front of you, coming from all parts of the world, the students and colleagues next to you, also coming from all parts of the world. True diversity, as I mentioned, global as part of our DNA. Second part, when we talk about return on investment, many of the participants, of course, have career goals and huge expectations. We try to support you along the way through all sorts of career activities. We call it our Career Accelerator program. And the Career Accelerator program focuses on three different pillars. The first one is know-how. This is really about very practical aspects in terms of how to prepare your CV to talk to executive search partners, how to develop your strategy for a salary negotiation, how to set up your LinkedIn profile. So it will prepare you to different challenges that you're going to face in terms of your next career step. The second pillar is the know who. We also know that jobs usually at this level are not always posted in job portals or in the newspapers, but they are basically announced through networks, through connections, through people you know. So you will get a chance to expand your network in the MBA, on your MBA journey, not only within your cohort, but within the worldwide alumni network that we operate. And finally, the know why. This is a very important question. You all are looking back on the distinguished career and the career ahead of you. So the question arises, what drives my career? What motivates me? What satisfies me? So we also have offers along those lines where you can explore what is really important for you in your professional life for the next 5, 10, or 20 years ahead of you. The third aspect I want to highlight when we talk about return on investment, I said a lot about networking. We do support your networking not only in the classroom, through all sorts of events and activities, but also through our online platform. It's a proprietary closed platform called VUIA Connect, where you can connect to any student or alumni at the VU Executive Academy, regardless of where you find them in the world. You can connect directly, you can take the initiative and approach them because you probably want to work in the company they are working for. You saw that they have an interesting career profile. They are probably working in a country you want to move into. So different motivations for getting in touch. And this is the framework and the network that we provide for you to take up your next career challenge. All of these aspects, of course, strongly depend on your initiative. We are here to support you, but it's your journey, and you pick up whatever you find useful along those lines of what I just explained. Yeah, I mentioned that I will come back to hard facts in terms of return on investment. I put a couple of them on the slide for you to browse through. They come from different sources. One is our alumni survey, which we did last year. You also have facts and figures from the Financial Times ranking, which looks into what career development have our graduates achieved 3 years after graduations in terms of salary levels, in terms of promotions, and so on. And without going into too much detail at this point, because you see the facts and figures in front of you, one thing that we can clearly highlight and point out to is that an MBA can be, if you want it to be, a career changer, a game changer in your career. We know from our alumni survey that 80% of our alumni and students already early on in the program changed their job. Half of them in the same company, moving on to more responsibility, moving on to bigger positions in the company, and half of them are looking for new opportunities outside. So it definitely is a way to promote your career path, to give it a certain direction. Again, it's something we are supporting you with in all sorts of different dimensions, and you choose which direction you're going to head. Yeah, I think this is as much as I want to say on return on investment. Just to briefly summarize the highlights or the key facts of the Global Executive MBA. You are working with a very senior audience, on average 37 years old, in terms of work experience, around 10 to 15 years. Leadership experience, I mentioned the double degree program. We talked about the virtual team project. And again, you find a lot of aspects and elements of our international diversity in this program and on this slide. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's a great way to get yourself exposed to a very diverse and international network, to get 2 degrees from well-established business schools in Europe or the US. So you get a lot of flexibility to driving your career in a global environment. And another aspect which may be worth mentioning, it's about 40 days off your job over the period of 16 months. So that means it's also manageable in terms of your work-related responsibilities. And I guess with that, I'm very much looking forward to many of your questions. Let me just highlight one aspect. Beyond this presentation and our Q&A session right away, there are lots of different ways to get in touch with us. We are here to consult you on your MBA journey before you make the decision, even before you fill in the official application forms, because we know that this is quite some work that it's demanded from you. So if you have any questions, the program manager, Manfred Buchner, and we'll have the details on a separate slide later on, is available. We can connect you to alumni in your country, in your industry, so that you get a first-hand insight of what it is to do an MBA. And we also can arrange for you, if there are modules in session, for you to come by to peek in experiencing what an MBA journey at the VU Executive Academy is. And with that, I'm looking forward to Anna and the many questions that you have.
Indeed. We have actually quite a few questions coming in from our audience. And we're going to kick it off actually with a step back into the profile of the class, because this was a hot topic. And first of all, can you tell us just what the minimum amount of work experience is required to join the MBA?
So the minimum work experience, depending on the MBA program, for professional MBAs, is 3 years. For the executive MBA programs, it's 5 years. So that's the legal minimum requirements. As you've seen from the slides, people are in both types of programs usually more experienced. But what you also see here are averages. When we talk about 15 years of average work experience, that means we have outliers to both ends, and it really depends on your profile and what you bring to the table, whether you're going to be an interesting student for your colleagues.
Exactly. And if you talk about people with 15 years of work experience, they might be also a bit more senior in terms of the amount of time they've been living on this earth. And is the average age of, I think, 37, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Are there also outliers among this area?
Yeah, this is what an average is. Okay. Yeah, and I think, again, this is something that's worth stressing. We're looking for diversity here. Mm-hmm. Because, as you mentioned, there are some people who are more experienced and longer on this planet. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we are also familiar with a species called digital natives, and they're usually much younger than an average 40-year-old executive. So we think that a good mix in the classroom is what we're looking for. So if you're not 37 yet, but younger, if you don't have 14 years of professional experience, but less, then one way to explore whether you would be a good candidate is just simply send us your CV, and we have a brief look at it, and then we can consult you which of the programs would be the best fit for you. Exactly,
and because also I think it might be a good idea to bring in these digital natives, because for the more skilled and experienced managers, they might be also leading a team which consists of these kinds of species, as you call it.
And you can learn a lot from them of how they deal with technologies, and where the buzzword of the day is technology and digital transformation. Mm-hmm. So I think particularly from that perspective, it's very fruitful to have a diversity also in terms of age in the program.
Definitely. Well, let's take a deeper look into the program itself. You mentioned that there are international residencies in regions of the world, from Hong Kong to New York City, Hyderabad, Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, and why were these regions chosen?
Well, basically, the idea was to choose regions which, from our part of the world, are, first of all, very different, and would not be part of your probably daily work environment. Yeah. So if you look at companies in Europe, then there are not too many trading ties into Latin America, so to speak. On the other hand, if you think of China and India, they are the two giants of these days. Yeah. And knowing how they do business and how these countries operate is, of course, something that you need to understand if you work in a global environment. Mm-hmm. And then with the US, we again have another giant, which is in terms of development very different than China and India. And I think this mix of difference, and again, diversity is the word, makes it really special to go to these different locations and compare your experiences with what you already bring to the table.
Yes, and I think this might be a good moment to jump back to the schedule and to maybe really connect these regions to the courses that are offered in this particular international residency. So we see in Rio de Janeiro and in Buenos Aires, the topic is economies in transition. Why was that chosen to take place in South America instead of, for instance, in Vienna?
Well, basically because, Latin America, Argentina and Brazil is a continent of emerging markets. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you look at our part of the world, you could say in Central and Eastern Europe, we have a lot of emerging markets as well. But as we do have students coming from that region, we thought it's not so exciting for them to go back home and see what they know anyway. But taking them to other parts where, again, emerging markets and companies in emerging markets are facing all sorts of challenges, and compare that with their backgrounds in different parts of the world.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that makes then a good point to then jump onto this topic and less the region of other economies in transition. The topic of globalization comes up in Hong Kong, and I mean, for me, that makes a little bit more sense, but maybe to someone who's new in our audience that might not hear these topics all the time, why was Hong Kong chosen to be the site for this course?
So Hong Kong basically is a gateway to China, but also a very strong and important player in the region. If you think of logistics, one of the biggest logistics hubs in the world, a financial center. Yeah, so Hong Kong as a city in itself is very interesting, and we will also travel and see companies in mainland China, in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou, to experience that part of the world, and then globalization. I think China, without any doubt, is one of the major players and you want to understand and feel. And I think this is another very important part of the residencies. We can talk and read a lot about it, yeah, and we all know that China is a very important player in the world. But if you see and you feel the vibrant and dynamic environment in that part of the world, you get a very different perspective on what's going on and how we in our part of the world are dealing with that.
And the residency in Hong Kong, I mean, it only lasts from Tuesday to Saturday. What is like the rationale behind such a small chunk of time? Can you really experience Hong Kong?
I think what we do is, and you can always argue, but what we do is try to give you a deep dive. Yeah. This is why we have academics coming in. They talk about macroeconomic developments. They talk about political developments. But you also get an opportunity to meet the business community. Yeah, and it's a very condensed program. We are going to be very busy during that time. So you get really a very condensed experience of what this country and the different facets are all about.
Okay. And what does it typically look like then? You have classes in the morning and visits in the afternoon?
Yeah, that could be one format. It depends a little bit on the local logistics. Yeah, it can be 1 day of 1 or half day of classes, and then we add the company visits. Yeah, that's a little bit also dependent on logistics like traffic and these kind of things and where the companies are that we are going to visit. But we want to make sure that you get a holistic perspective on each of the countries that we're visiting. Yeah, so this is why we're looking at topics from different angles.
Okay. And to really also be on site means you make that personal connection. I believe also is a good advantage of going and seeing it for yourself rather than reading a book.
Yeah, that's right.
But I hope this answers your questions. Keep them coming. We had another question coming in about a different aspect of the program, namely the virtual team project, the global team project. And what is the idea behind this program? Project.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that you get a chance to experience yourself in group work. Yeah, and you might think that sounds very odd because you're working in teams all the time. But when you look at the teams in the companies that you're working in, then usually they have very clear and assigned roles. Yeah, you're either a member of the team, you're leading the team. Yeah, and based on these on these rules and regulations, your task is pretty, or your role is pretty obvious. Yeah, in this setting, you're basically among equals. Yeah, there is no team leader assigned. You have to find ways to deal with that situation. You can try out your leadership skills in this informal setting with informal hierarchies, so to speak. And you also get to work with people from different parts of the world, yeah, that you don't know and that don't have any connection to your company. So you're starting from scratch, setting up a team, and you have to deliver a quite comprehensive project in a very short period of time.
And where are the other people coming from?
From our two sister programs, so to speak, the Carlson Executive MBA in Minneapolis and the Lingnan Executive MBA in Guangzhou.
Ah, okay, in China. Yep. So you're really meeting across time zones. That's probably also a new feature, I guess, for people who might be doing business worldwide, but maybe always at one time zone at a time, or maximum two. Is it possible to then pick the program with, you pick it, I assume, with your group mates? Yes. And can you pick an existing business case that somebody's in?
It can be various different topics, yeah, and I'll just highlight two, so to give you an idea. One group a few years ago, one colleague was working in the oil industry and had the idea that you could survey, for security reasons, you could survey oil fields in remote areas, in very harsh environments, not through humans, yeah, which is can be quite dangerous, but through drones, yeah. And this group basically developed a market entry strategy for this technology and related services into different parts of the world. Yeah, so that was tied to a specific business.
Okay, that was already functioning. And it was now a new market entry strategy. So a little bit of
It doesn't have to be that way. We also had groups coming up with new ideas. For example, an online platform to trade fair goods, second-hand goods. Yeah, how do you bring people together? How can you upcycle products? How do you bring designers into place to upcycle your wedding dress, for example, to something very special? That was a completely new venture, and that actually was put into place after the MBA program, and one of the alumni is running that as her startup now.
Wow, okay. What happens when you're maybe doing this group project worldwide and one of your team members just is offline? You can't reach them. Is there a certain strategy you recommend with your experience?
Well, basically, that's part of the challenges that we want you to get into through this project, basically. Yeah. And what you need to do is find ways of how to deal with that. Yeah. How to engage with the other colleague in that part of the world to see what's going on, to try to find out what's behind the scenes in order to make the group project work. Yeah. And while that might be probably more obvious and easier with your US colleagues, you know that the Chinese mentality is probably very different, and you have to find different ways and different approaches to reach your goal.
Okay, so quite a real challenge, I would assume then. Another question coming in from one of our listeners, she was wondering if there are modules in the Global Executive MBA about project management topics.
Not specifically. Yeah, so in the curriculum of the Executive MBA, we basically focus on all the topics that you need to lead a company, a business unit, a bigger team. Yeah, and we assume that at this level you are familiar with many of the project management tools. But we do have a special program where project management is much more in the focus. That's the professional MBA in project management.
Right. Okay. So there is a specialization on that. But I'm assuming when you're involved in the global team project that there might be some project tools like this online platform you mentioned provided and talked about and discussed.
Well, basically what we do provide you is with some frameworks and some guidelines of what we've seen work well in this type of setting. And then it's basically up to you to take up the challenge.
Okay, well, you heard her. Do we have any more questions coming in? Dear audience, we have a few more minutes for you tonight, and we're very happy to use this time to answer anything you might have on your mind. We'll give our audience a few more minutes to ask a question, of course. And welcome to our new listener, Monica. Thanks for joining in. Well, thank you, Chris, for the good feedback. We also, in the MBA, often have people interested in the career developments of some of our alumni. And I know there's always one alumnus that you mentioned that brings out a certain smile because he comes back to work on Mondays with a bunch of new ideas. Can you share this story maybe for our audience?
Okay, I think you raised a very important point here. If you want to, I mentioned briefly before that you have multiple ways to get in touch with us, to get in touch with alumni. We're happy to connect you. But if you want to browse through what our alumni are doing after they finish their MBA, I would like to direct your attention to the website because we have all of our career stories online. Yeah, so you can check out what people think about the program, what the program has done to their career, how they developed further, what they liked about it, and where they are now and where they started out. So looking at the career profiles online is probably also a good idea of getting a good idea of what to expect.
And if there is someone who is particularly very interesting, would it be possible for maybe Chris or Akhtar or Peter or Smalia to really contact one of these?
Yeah, we are very happy to connect you to those people that you find with their career stories online. But if you say, you know, I come out of this industry or this country or this role, I want to talk to somebody who's close to my profile, then please get in touch with Manfred Buchner. We have his contact details later on. He's your first point of contact, and then we are very happy to connect you.
Yeah, one point that was just brought up, so thanks, Akhtar, is what about the class size? And Chris already knew it was 46 in 1 year. Can you explain how the class size typically looks in other years?
Usually, on average, you could look at around 40 people. Yeah, it really depends on the specific intake, but that's about the class size that you can envisage.
So a good amount for networking, I would say.
That's right.
And still small enough for that interaction with the professors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, where are the professors coming in?
Oh, really all over the world. Yeah, of course, as it is a double degree program with the Carlson School, we have a lot of faculty from the Carlson School in the program.
Okay.
But also people from Harvard, people from IE in Spain, from Germany. So really very global also at this end.
All right. So also a good chance for networking.
That's right.
If you'd like to also expand your network that way. Well, listeners, thank you very much for coming. I'm happy to also welcome a final question or two. Thank you as well for your active participation. It always makes our job a lot of fun when we have a lot of questions coming in. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much from my side as well. Please don't hesitate. If you have any questions, let us know. We're happy to help you and be your partner on your MBA journey.
Good evening.